Hello, my beautiful collective. Welcome to the final installment of the Healing Podcast with uGogo Mphemba. So today I decided to wear a brown duk, just like Umakuyu in that picture. Umakuyu. So here's the thing. My son's nickname is Ukuyu. Because one of my nieces could not say Mkulu to my dad, and she'd say Kuyu. And so mangtekete sumtanami, mangfuna ukuthi Mkulu, ngithi Kuyu. So now I have a tendency of saying Umakuyu instead of Umakulu. But yeah, I wanted ukufaka lel dugu. It's beautiful how we reincarnate, isn't it? I think it is, because we are born ngo 18 banbani, Umakulu was wearing that duk, right? And today, in 2025, I'm wearing a brown duk reminiscent of that one. And you can only imagine in 20-something or maybe 2090 something or 30 something, right? I'll have a great-grandchild who's going to probably wear a brown duk but accessorize it ngendlela yakhe. So it's just beautiful how DNA allows us to reincarnate as more evolved and more creative versions of ourselves, right? So guys, this episode has been a long time coming, and I just hope and pray ukuthi my delivery is as precise and as crisp as possible, I guess, right? But before we get into it, a few disclaimers as per usual. I am a South African Xhosa woman who was born and raised in KZN, KwaZulu-Natal. So I will go into isiXhosa, I will go into isiZulu throughout this podcast. I do predominantly speak English to try and keep it as PC as possible. But if there is something you do not understand that I explain in my Nguni languages, then please feel free to engage in the comments and help one another out. I'll also try to engage as much as possible. Secondly, this podcast is based on, but not limited to, African spirituality. So if you do not resonate with the African spirituality space, then this podcast may not be for you. But I still recommend that you tune in because there's a lot to be learned here, African or not. Okay. All right. With all of that being said, guys, let's get into today's episode. There is so much that we need to discuss, to get through in true Makulu fashion. You know, there are notes for days. So I am going to be referring to these notes because this is a lot of information. I did try to illustrate this drawing for you guys as best as I could on Canva, man. But yeah, let's get into it and let's see how today's delivery goes. Right. So in episodes 1 through to 8, sorry guys, I had to go downstairs. Yolandelini paper being Umakulu took us through what it is to be human, how we become humans, and all in the context of African spirituality, right? She explained to us the laws that we are subject to, the universal laws that we are subject to as these human beings. She explained to us as well ukuthi how certain aspects of our lives are influenced by these universal laws. And she also then taught us how to live in alignment and the importance of living in alignment. She tackled poverty in the African space and gave us an understanding of why it is there and how we counteract it, how we move away from an impoverished state of mind. She explained the indoctrination of the African mind and also explained how we move away from all those low vibrational energies and pursue high vibrational energy, because light is high vibrational in its nature. Light is only dimmed by blockages and interferences, right? That then mask the true nature of light so that it does not give off its natural intensity. Okay. So today in episode 9, she's reminding me that we also looked at what death looks like, the process that we go through as these human beings, who are in decomposition, in expansion, right? Up until we achieve separation and then begin the process of crossing over, right? She explained the difference in frequencies between our earthly realm and the ancestral realm, and the importance of making sure that you are of a vibrational match to the frequency of the next realm, of the ancestral realm, by the time that you achieve separation and begin the process of crossover. Okay. And so, in explaining ukuthi as human beings, we are in decomposition and expansion from the moment that we enter this earthly realm through birth. Umakulu today said she wants to expand on this decomposition and expansion so that we understand our light and understand ukuthi how it translates into our daily lives, how it translates to nature itself. Because as these human beings, we are simply this God energy having a physical experience of itself. We are simply this God energy or the universe or life force having a physical experience of itself. Why? Because, guys, it is such a blessing to experience things physically. This is the lowest state at which you can resonate, right? As light. Light precipitates and condenses up until it becomes this physical form. Umakulu explained this in previous episodes. And when you're now in this physical form, things are that much more slower, and therefore the experience is a lot more intense. And therefore there's a lot to learn, okay? Things that you would miss if you were constantly in this high vibrational state. So yes, we pursue high vibrational energy, or we pursue being in a high vibrational state, but it is important, right, to understand and learn from the physical low vibrational state, okay, so that by the time we move on to these high vibrational light beings, when we achieve crossover or when we achieve the separation phase of decomposition and expansion, then we are well-rounded, sort of high quality, high integrity spiritual beings or light beings. Okay, so the physical environment, the physical body is very, very important. Your physical life experience is very, very important. Okay. When I tell you it is not easy filming these episodes because I'm doing everything on my own. So there's a lot of admin, a lot of getting up, pausing, because I film in clips as well as the recording. I record in voice clips, like it's a lot. But anywho, so Umakulu has always explained, Uba, in order for us to understand our spirituality, we need to look at what? We need to look at our physicality. Okay. And so in order to understand how we are in decomposition and expansion, right? How we decompose in expansion up until we reach the separation phase of this decomposition and expansion, we need to now look at nature, okay? Because nature is a result of the movement and mechanism of this light, okay? Of which we are as these humans. Hue meaning color. Color is a form of light. It's light, okay? It's a band of light, right? And so, okay, nature is an integral part of us. And therefore, if we want to understand ourselves better as human beings, we need to understand nature. And Umakulu delves into a lot of science because scientists study and then try to understand what is going on, okay, and share that information. So Umakulu then uses that information, right, that has been observed, that has been studied, right, to now give you an understanding of your spiritual makeup as this human being, which then condenses into your physical being and the physical experience you are having or we are having. Okay, I'm not the exception. Right. So, again, when we look at our solar system, right, we know Guti, we are part of a solar system because the sun is the main source of energy in our universe. Okay. So, Tinage, as these physical human beings here on Earth, right? We occupy this planet, and this planet is at a particular distance from the sun. That is Earth. Okay, all these planets are at a particular distance from the sun, very reminiscent of our chakras. Okay, so we can see a higher power life force as the main source of energy, and then we've got our crown chakra, third eye chakra, throat chakra, heart chakra, solar plexus, sacral chakra, and root chakras, okay, at varying distances from the intensity, from the source of light, okay. So the universe gives us an idea of our makeup. So here we are on Earth, and we all know that again we experience what we call seasons here on planet Earth. Okay, these seasons happen in accordance to the part of the Earth or the surface of the Earth that is facing the sun or closest to the sun or furthest away from the sun. Okay, depending on the distance, or rather depending on the amount of sunlight that particular area of the Earth's surface receives from the sun, that is going to determine what? Our seasons. So we have 4 seasons. We have summer, we have autumn, winter, and spring. Right. So when you look at these seasons, you see Uguti, each season brings a variation of energy, right? And so if we now look at how this translates to our human experience, right? As these humans, these light beings who are having a physical experience here on Earth, you see, Uguti, the energy is going to shift and transform every now and then, okay? According to the universal laws that she explained in an earlier episode, right? You'll see, Uguti, during the summer, we are receiving the most energy, right? From the source of light, okay? So we are being recharged, all right? So summer would be a time for you to be the most productive, okay? That would be the time for you to pursue your goals, right? And really put in the energy, okay? Even the earth provides nourishment that is going to provide energy for us. That is summer. And then we move on to autumn. Now you see in autumn, the earth starts to look different. It starts to change color. Trees start to shed their leaves, okay? So then autumn would be a time of release, okay? Of shedding. All right, it would be a time of slowing down. Okay, so not being as productive as before. So now you've maxed your energy levels. Okay, and now you're moving to a state where you need to now start to rest, prepare for rest, right? That is autumn. And also, autumn is a time where we are now harvesting a lot of vegetables that are very hearty, that we'll make stews with, you know, in preparation for winter, all right, which is now where we experience lack of energy, we experience a bit of discomfort, and now winter prompts us to huddle up together to stay warm, right? To now tap into the resources that autumn provided, right? To tap into the resources that we pursued during the summer, right? And we managed to accrue in the autumn, right? And it's a time of now rest, not doing too much, recuperation, but also self-reflection, introspection, things like that, okay? And then from winter, we move on to spring, which is now a regeneration phase. Okay, so now the earth regenerates. Okay, trees begin to blossom and bloom once again. Okay, and so now this is the time to what? To now get back into it. Okay, to now kickstart again. All right, and you do this gradually. But also spring is a time of gratitude. Why? Because we were in a very uncomfortable time of winter, and this time prompted us to slow down and reflect and introspect. Okay, and so now we give gratitude, right, for all the blessings that we were afforded during summer, autumn. We give gratitude for the winter time, the ability to pause and reflect on the past so that the future looks better for us, so that the future looks evolved for us. Okay. And so spring would be a time where you celebrate a lot. Host your gratitude ceremonies. Okay. Go out with friends, have your brunches, have your lunches, host your events, all right, because the energy is right. As a human being, you have to try to live in alignment as much as possible, okay? And nature is there to constantly remind you of what alignment looks like, okay? So if you're somebody who's productive, maximally productive during the winter time, you are going to find yourself out of alignment and you will feel like your efforts are not paying off. Okay. As a human being, you need to respect nature and live in accordance with nature. Okay. This worked for me. And when Umakulu dropped this for me, it was such a gem, right? And I don't know how I missed it in the previous episodes. Where aligning with just the seasons made my life make so much sense. And if you look at the Emoga Makulu, right? Umakulu, we will be doing the most summertime, December, January, February, in terms of having sessions, in terms of cleanses, in terms of traveling, going to work here and there and everywhere. We do the most December, January, February, right? March, April, May, now we start to slow down, okay? Now we're in an energy where, okay, we predominantly work from home, right? Oh, guys, nezinto ziyamova lana, angisazi if my chair has moved, but we'll just keep going. And then by the time winter comes around, right, we're seated, I'm shooting a podcast, you guys are seated listening to the podcast. There's not much physical action movement going on, okay? The energy is a lot slower, a lot calmer, a lot more reflective, right? Umakulu is saying, here's the information that you need. It's time for you to learn. It's time for you to introspect. It's time for you to self-reflect with this podcast, right? And then spring comes along and she's like, okay, now take what I have taught you and implement. Begin to implement, right? Begin to action all of these things out so that your lives begin to change for the better, okay? So aligning with these seasons is going to help you manifest with ease. It is going to help you move away from low vibrational energies with ease. You will be less depressed. You will be less sensitive, right? Or not easily offended. Let me say that, right? By people who refuse to do their healing or do their introspection and face their own demons, and so they project onto you. Now I was project a magnet yaleyo projection galula. Okay, when you are in alignment, it is just a different energy. It's also easier to set boundaries, right? Because you feel the minute The minute something is out of alignment, you feel the discomfort and you're able to set a boundary and say, this is not welcome in my space. And this is not going to now change the direction in which I'm moving, right? We stay aligned and we keep pressing forward. Okay. So these 4 seasons are very, very important. Okay. Now, what happens is that you have the sun, and the sun again will give rise to these 4 seasons. Okay. And according to decomposition and expansion occurs in 2 different stages, right? The first stage is the growth stage, and then the second is the maturation stage, okay? And the maturation stage is where now expansion is in full effect. Decomposition and expansion is in full effect, right? So, the growth phase, right, is the phase from birth right up until we see this energy now expand. So, from the sun, we get these 4 seasons: summer, autumn, winter, and spring. Now, remember that these seasons all make up what? They make up 1 year. They make up 1 year. So this is how the energy breaks down, right? As we grow and as we mature in decomposition and expansion. So from 0 to the first year of life. 0 means birth. So from birth to the first year of life. That is what we call the first boundary. Okay. Now, what is a boundary? A boundary is the point at which the energy now disperses, right? So from birth to the first year of life, right? You enter the earth as this light being. Okay. During this phase, okay, during this year, we're going to call it a year interval, right? That is the closest that you will ever be to life force vibrationally as a human being, to this God energy as a human being. Okay, so a child born from age of 0 right through to the first year of life, that is your most high vibrational state as a human being. Okay. Even though there are curses that are in your Akashic record and you're here to resolve, that is your most high vibrational state. And you will never reach that stage again. Okay. So it is very important for us as adults, right, to benefit from that energy, because children from the age of 0 to the first year of life are very, very close to this God energy. They are very high vibrational, and having them in our macabres, right, is also beneficial for us. From the ages of 0 to 1 years old, children are very high vibrational. They are able to transcend a lot of spiritual afflictions as well. Okay? Really depending on how intense the spiritual afflictions are, but the majority of the time, that's why medical professionals will say that newborns are actually really strong. They are. They really are. Because they are high vibrational. What's that? They are high vibrational. Okay. That's why I'm a newborn right through to toddlers in the first year of life. You don't need to do too much to protect them from low vibrational energies. That's why umntwana uzothanjiswa nje ivimbela abe right. Umntwana athanjiswe nje iharmans abe right, awahlanjiswe ngayo abe right. because they are already high vibrational, because your high vibrational guides and ancestors have easy access to them. They see them. You even see abantwana just giggling with thin air. You think they're giggling with thin air. No, they're not. No, they're not. They are giggling and laughing with your high vibrational guides and ancestors who have easy access to them. I was so blessed. By the time my son was able to articulate himself, he straight out told me. So my dad would not be an ancestor to me since my father has passed on. My father would be a spirit guide. But to my son, my father would be an ancestor or could be an ancestor, still a spirit guide or ancestor, right? Now, it depends on the level of spiritual responsibility and respect he's able to attain on the other side. That then determines how quickly he can be regarded as an ancestor to my grandchildren or great-grandchildren, right? So my son, I had a picture of my dad lapha side table, a sitting room, and he said, "Mommy, could you tickle me?" And I was like, "What?" And he was laughing and he said, "Yes." And he was pointing at the picture. "Could you tickle me?" I said, Umkulu tickles you?" And he said, "Yes." And he was giggling, right? And I was like, oh my goodness. I later then in a dream saw my dad literally tickling him and they were laughing and he laughed out so loud, Lomdanalo. And I was just like, oh my goodness, dad was tickling him. And my dad used to like to tickle and it kind of irritated me when I was a teenager, But I was just fortunate enough to have that experience because many people don't have that experience. By the time abantwana can articulate themselves, they don't tell them about the spiritual side of life that they're seeing in their high vibrational state, So I've just been very, very fortunate to have a child who's very vocal, about everything that goes on. So, okay, that is the first boundary, okay? And in terms of this decomposition and expansion, boundaries are the point at which now the light disperses, okay? So we have the first boundary, which is basically the boundary of the sun. And from the sun, this human being enters the earth, right? The sun being the source of light, in other words, enters the earth. And so that is boundary number 1. Now, from 0 to 1, there are certain characteristics that you'll observe, obviously, emntwaneni. And like Umakulu had said, this is your most high vibrational state. This is your most authentic self as well. Okay, this is your most authentic self. So, umntwana omncane exhibits a personality. Some children are criers, a lot more sensitive. Some children are laughers. Some children are just stoic and they're observers. That is their most authentic self. You can already tell what the dominant characteristic or personality yalo muntu will be from that age interval of of 0 to the first year of life. Okay, you can already see. My son was very observant. From the age of 0 to the first year of life, he wasn't much of a crier. He was observant to the point where family would be so shocked. Would say, oh my gosh, he just does not cry. He just doesn't cry. He's very observant, And he just sit there looking around. Mdlali say he'd laugh, but he wasn't much of a crier. Okay. So manje ngobe seteteme tefa, I know ukuthi it is a learned behavior. Okay, seqala ukusa ke manje sebona ukuthi mangikhala khona izinto engikwazi ukuzithola ngokukhala, uyabona? But i-personality yakhe as an adult, I know very well ukuthi akazi ukuba indoda etetemayo. I know that. I know very well ukuthi uzoba indoda observant, abe quiet, observe. You know? Abasabanga umsindo bakithi bathi mina imina yani. Oh, chokran bakithi. So that is the first part of the growth stage, yani, decomposition in expansion. Okay, let me see if I'm missing something. So this first boundary, 0 to 1 years old, is the most authentic, the most high vibrational that you will ever be as a human being. Now we reach the second boundary, and something interesting now begins to happen. Now, begins to happen. So, okay, this is the second boundary. It is now represented by the 4 seasons. So from the sun, right, to the 4 seasons. Okay, this light is dispersing, right? And this now represents the age range of 1 to 4 years old. Okay, now from 0 to 1 and 1 to 4, this is the growth stage of decomposition in expansion. Okay, and so, okay, from 1 to 4 years old, they are still high vibrational, but now remember they've had time to interact with various macabres, and now their macabres have started to exchange energy. So now we're going to start to see various behaviors being interpreted. Okay, so they are still very expressive, but now you begin to see that from 1 to 4 years old, a human being is a lot more intentional about how they express themselves. Okay, so there's still an energy of oblivion and innocence because they're still learning about their environment, and there's not much of an understanding of a concept here, danger. So, okay, they are experimental in the sense that they are going to want to know, ooh, what's that? What does that do, right? And they learn through experience, right? They learn through physical interaction, emotional interaction, mental interaction, spiritual interaction. Okay, and so from learning, okay, when I interact with that particular object, this is the experience that I have. They're able to sift whether this is a pleasant experience or an unpleasant experience, right? They're able to express their emotions and see how the emotions are received. If they are consoled and comforted, right, then they learn, okay, my emotions are valid and I will be consoled and comforted. If they are not consoled or not comforted, then they will learn, nobody is going to come to my aid. All right. So this is an important stage because this is an imprint stage. Okay, it's an imprint stage. Guys, ingana uyeki khale izithule. Okay, you're teaching that child emotional disconnect. Ingane uyayiconsola and you set boundaries, uyifundise, and you teach umntwana how to self-regulate. Uzofunda kubani? Ufuna funde kubantu ngaphandle how to self-regulate with substances and drugs. You teach your children how to self-regulate. You need to be present emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Okay, I'm currently in the process of teaching my son ukuphahla. Oh, it is the most beautiful and most funny experience ever because it does phahlelayo. And the crazy thing is he gets the things as phahlele and he comes and he tells me, Mommy, look, I got my car. Mommy, look, I got this. Yes, my grandma and grandpa heard me. From a young age, you teach them. Who must teach them? If abafundiswa wena bakhona bathakathi bazobafundisa ukuthakaza. So you need to imprint on your children. And don't leave that up to people who have no degree of care for umntanakho that you have. Okay. So this is an imprint age. which means ukuthi the behaviors that they observe, right, they are going to stick and they are going to show them instinctually in adulthood. All right. So what I love about this age, this second boundary as well, is that uMakhulu had mentioned ukuthi this is also the correction phase, right? So umntwana uzokukhombisa ama behaviors awadobile, right? They will exhibit behaviors that they picked up from interacting with other people, other children at school, etc. And so when, as a parent, you get to rectify those behaviors, all right? By advising them, showing them, teaching them what this behavior is not it. This is not how we behave. It is wrong. You can do better in this way. Okay. Even if you and, your partner or as parents, you get into a quarrel in front of umntwana, right? Don't feel guilty and ignore the situation. Go back to umntwana, right? And firstly, show umntwana ukuthi nina as parents, you can reach a state of calm. Okay, if it has happened that manje you had this outburst in front of umntwana, you need to now show umntwana ukuthi you can regulate. And then you go back to umntwana, ne? And you explain to them, ukuthi sometimes mommy and daddy can get a little bit frustrated with each other, okay? But mommy and daddy always come back to being friends. And mommy and daddy love you. And don't you forget that. Okay? As humans, it's not our job to be perfect. It is our job to always aim for balance. Okay? And so when we leave things hanging, that imbalance is going to translate in adulthood. Yalabantwan, who are observing this energy, observing these behaviors that we now don't go back and rectify. Okay. Now, each of the 4 seasons occupies a space of 3 months. Okay. And so when we add these months together, we get 12 months, right? When we total up the 4 seasons. This brings us to the third boundary, which is from the age of 4 to 12 years old. Okay. Now, this is the last boundary of the growth stage. Okay, so as a human being, you will only grow right up until 12 years old. From 12 years old, you then begin the process of maturation. That's why again, we see a lot of girls and boys into puberty. Girls will begin to experience their period around this time, and boys will, I think their testicles drop or something. I'm not too sure. Not too sure, but I'm a mom of a boy child, so okay. So now this is the stage of behavioral permanency. Okay. Umakhuluti, this is where now behavioral permanency occurs. Okay, so from the age of 4 to 12, now the character is being solidified. Behavioral permanency. Okay, so you look at a behavior, yomtanako, you basically get to see the little human being that you have birthed and created and molded. You start to see a character emerge. You start to see these learned behaviors through their experience, their life experience, begin to shape their personality. Okay, now they know what they like, they know what they don't like. Usually during this time, they also know what their favorite color is. They know the types of foods they like to eat and the types of foods they don't like to eat. They're very expressive and they show boundaries as well. Okay. You also start to see boundaries in their social engagements with other people. They choose certain friends. They drop certain friends. Oh, this one's not my friend anymore. Oh, I don't like chilling with this one anymore. You know? Their personality starts to come through. Okay. And usually this is when the hormones will kick in during the latter parts, right? And that doesn't make things any better. But this is their body now showing them that we've got all the tools we need now to adult. Okay. So if you as a parent miss the mark from the age of 0 to 12 years old, there is nothing you can do after 12 years old. Because the energy is not conducive for you to effect changes to damages that occurred in the earlier stages. The energy is not conducive because this human being is no longer a child. They are now entering adulthood. And they are now going to mature and mature and mature and enter various age ranges of adulthood. Right? So it is important to put in the work to molding a human being into a well-rounded, positive contributor to society from birth to the age of 12 years old. Okay. So they're also very experimental in order to further develop their character. So in the African space, as African parents, siyathanda ukuthi, hey, bayaganga, hey, ama-teenager wezwa, hey, bayaganga. No, they need to develop this character. And they need to learn what works for them and what doesn't work for them. You see, when as a parent, you need to keep up. Tina, we tend to want to tell abantwana to slow down and don't do this and don't do that. We need to keep up and we need to make them understand ukuthi lento yenzayo, why ngithi ungayenzi. And when it backfires, also help them gain an understanding of why did that situation backfire on you. Because then they learn. Simply just lashing out actually makes you look incompetent to them. It makes you look incompetent. It makes you look like you are an adult who cannot handle your emotions. You are an adult who has no idea what they're doing. You're frustrated. And so, especially a teenager, they start to see, oh, I have more composure than mom. I have more composure than dad. I got this life thing. You know? So you need to give them credibility. They need to trust you. They need to trust Uguti, you know what you're doing. And you're not just advising them from an emotional place, but it's also coming from previous experiences that you had and that you actually learned from. Okay, so after being intentionally experimental in order to develop their character, you start to see them now having preferences. Oh no, I don't know. I don't like rugby. I prefer soccer. Nah, I don't like sports. I'm more of a culture person. I like music. I want to take up piano lessons. Right? Throughout it all, you need to be there as a parent in order to develop a well-rounded adult. An adult now is a peace of mind. Ingathi mayengekho phambi kwakho le adult sewuyaphambana ba kazi uplo mntana wenza ntoni apha khoyo because yandihlaza apha khoyo lo mntana. So that you have peace of mind. And you don't have those thoughts because you know you raised a well-rounded individual. So it's important to pay attention to the environment in which we raise our kids, the energies that we surround them with or expose them to, the people. And we always need to check in and make sure wherever there's an imbalance, we rectify the imbalance. Okay, whenever we observe certain fishy behaviors, we quickly rebalance, recalibrate before it turns into something big. I-adulting asakhuzeki. Awukwazi uku-recalibrate adults. You can't. You've missed the recalibration time of the growth phase of decomposition and expansion. You want to recalibrate a person who's in the maturation phase. That's not even how science works. That's not even how science works. Once a cell enters a stage of maturation, there's no further specialization that can be done. So you need to specialize at a time where the cells are differentiating. Okay, aligning with nature is going to make your life make sense. All right. So an important point that I almost missed here is that in their chosen experiences, right? So remember that they are experimental during this age range, 4 to 12 years old, and then they get to choose the experiences that they want to have. That teaches them choice-making abilities. Okay. So that they become adults who are able to make healthy and positive choices because they recognize my experience as either healthy or unhealthy, as either toxic or non-toxic, as either low vibrational or high vibrational. And they are able to always make a choice that pursues positivity, high vibrational energy each time. Okay, but you as the parent need to now calibrate that. Okay, and wherever an imbalance tries to creep in, you rectify. Okay, so after the 12 months of the 4 seasons together, there is no further what? There is no further condensation, precipitation. Okay, because each of these months have about 30 days, 31 days and whatnot. So from the age of 12 to infinity is now the stage of maturation. Now you are in full-blown decomposition and expansion. Okay. And here it is all about self-mastery. It is all about self-mastery. Yes, your parents will be there as a support system, but there is nothing more they can do to shape and develop your character. Now it is all about self-mastery. Okay. This is where we find a lot of clashes beginning to emerge between parents and teenagers. I remember when I was a teenager, a lot of clashes with my parents because I felt like a lot of the times, ba'aloof, they're not in touch with reality. I'm here experiencing reality, because I'm a teenager and parents just want to say, don't do this, that's not how life works. Find out what is happening in my life, what experiences am I going through at school. Abantwana bayanifihlela izinto because they can see ukuthi anikho emotionally ready or emotionally strong enough to handle the energy that they bring. That's such a sad position for umntwana to be in. Mina, when I started to distance myself from my parents, luckily my dad clocked it. Ubaba ke vele bemthanda nje, beyithanda youth. Ifocus yakhe kakhulu was youth. Ingane zamaMphemba nje zinayo leyo nto le. So when he saw what I was starting to be distant, then he started recalibrating. What's okay, no, sissy, I want to be a part of your life experience. So share with me, and I promise to not be aggressive. but to listen, to understand, and then advise, but respect ukuthi you have a choice to either take my advice or not. And as a result, my parent was a very good friend of mine, ubaba, right up until adulthood. You know, you need to understand ukuthi your children do not owe you anything, and your children will exhibit the energy that you molded them into. Okay, some of you nineemfihlo ezisabekayo zamaphethini omntwana, and you expect umntwana to turn out okay. The energy is wrong spiritually. Umntwana is calling on ancestors who do not recognize them, bloodline-wise, lineage-wise. Abanye benu, you teach your children to follow religion and neglect their ancestors, when you saw very well ukuthi that did not work out for you. And you're struggling to make ends meet. But ngoba uphila labantu, awuphileli umphefumulo wakho ukuthi ube nokuthula, ube nenjabulo, impilo yenze sense, and want that for your kids. You want to involve abantwana in your facade. But I love God energy and how wise God energy is, because with this system of growth and maturation, then umntwana can reach this phase of self-mastery from 12 years old upwards and make different choices that they feel is better for them, more aligned for them. That's what I did. And life began to make sense. And now when I think back, ngibuka ukuthi, hey, ngabambezeleka. Ngoba nakho abantu lived in fear, nokonqena, to truly face the energy head on and understand what is going on here. People resorted to their comfort zone of being oblivious. Impilo is not making sense. Sigaqa ngamadolo phansi, but it's okay. Let's all suffer. I don't want to suffer. I don't want to be impoverished. Physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, no, andizi. And umntana magezi nje lapho. Agezi lapho. So, we need to exercise self-mastery, and you cannot achieve self-mastery without healing childhood wounds. Uyabona ukuthi the damage that occurred in the growth stage of decomposition and expansion, if unattended to, iba inkinga. It can only be rectified through healing. Okay, but healing requires self-realization, self-introspection, self-reflection, self. Right? Which brings me to the next point uMakhulu made. Yoguti, a lot of you are so concerned about observing compass conserve car with your partners. Oh, I'm married. I want to observe a compass conserve car. Oh, I'm starting to observe compass conserve car with my significant other. But you have not observed it with self first. How's that going to work? Some of you have tied yourselves up into karmic romantic relationships because you have an issue of self-love, self-esteem, self-worth. But ufuna uku-observe i-compass conserve car nomntana abantu. Compass conserve car begins with self. Compass conserve car begins with self. Compass can serve car begins with self. You have to get to a point of self-love first and know what that looks like for you. You have to know what self-esteem looks like for you, what self-confidence looks like for you, what self-worth looks like for you before you observe it with somebody else. Because then, so that's the part maybe I forgot to mention because she brought it up, that compass can serve car starts with self. So you need to look at your compass personally. You need to look at how you serve and how you allow others to serve you. Do you even serve yourself? Some of you don't even serve yourselves. You need to look at your relationship with your kin. You know? Is it existent? Do you set boundaries? Do you just allow toxic family members into your space? Well, they're family. You must be toxic and be allowed into my space. You need to set boundaries. We need to set boundaries. We need to set boundaries. With family, friends, acquaintances, boundaries. Because my life needs to make sense. I'm not here to be miserable. And if you don't set boundaries, your life experience will be miserable. You will get hurt. I learned that lesson. I've been going through the most. And I am so grateful to my guides and ancestors for just their presence in my life because, they do so much. You know what they brought to my attention? A friend of ours like Kaya, wahamba wayohlola, watshelwa ke ukuthi into zakhe ziyabheda because thina siyamthakatha. Friend books a reading with me. Ngiyamangala mina manje things are coming up ngithi ayibona wena kanti yini manje kwenzakalani lana? Qala uyaphika. Ngithi hayi. As end this session because I don't understand what's going on here. Mind you, umakhulu had told me, ngizilelele nje mini ngiziphumlele, wathi umakhulu, this person is coming and bringing drinks to your house. Just know ukuthi they are coming to cause ingxabano la endlini. I said, no, that's I'm mhlawumbe kunenyongo. Mhlawumbe kunenyongo uthi ngiyokhipha inyongo. That is a friend from Fantuka af. I said, sobona uthi uzozana. I told Phumla, I said, ayithiwa ubani ba wathi mina into engiyazi ngoma Mphemba akayibhudi sizobona. Hayi vele kube ntambama angafiki ngithi hayi no inyongo. The shock of my life, umuntu efika ebusuku eseletha ama drinks. Engena neziphuzo. Ngavele ngambuka nje. Kanti ungifunani lona? Mayesho yena kushuthi lo nyanga ke yabiza one of us ngegama yamtshela ke leyo nto yamtshela ukuthi akazilwele naye wazilwela. Ngithi sesiba bangani isikhathi sidanga ayikho nje into kuwe vele yathi awuthi ngimqonde vele lo because why ezongenza kanje. And ngifuna wazi ukuthi why sizoba secretive ngoba uyabona ukuthi le inyanga zamanga ziganga kanje. Secrecy. Doing things in the dark, shadows. Bandlondlobale. Because people are afraid to be open and honest with one another. Ngithi yabo usula into ongazazi. Now life is not making sense and ufuna ukwenza excuse yokuthini. I mean, I didn't know ngangithi ngiyazilwela. Entweni. All of this could have been avoided through communication. You see, nami usungidalela umsebenzi. I need to now rectify the imbalance you're causing. I need to now remove these curses. You know? You need to respect energy, guys. Ne? You can mask as much as you want to. And pretentiousness. But at the end of the day, you are subject to the laws of the universe. You will suffer karmic consequences for your actions. You will reach the separation phase of decomposition and expansion, and you will not achieve crossover. You will be bothersome to the people you've left behind in Mhlabeni, because guess what? In order for the energy to translate in the ancestral realm, physical action needs to be taken here. Kumele la emhlabeni sikuxolele thina, so that it shifts your energy and you can enter. So in all that you do, namagangangoze nawo, and thinking ukuthi you're safe because nobody sees you, know ukuthi that is ostrich mentality. And know ba uyasichana, and you will suffer the karmic consequence of your actions. Okay. So this brings us to the end of the final installment of the Healing Podcast, Gogo Mphemba. Umakhulu has taught you how to be a well-rounded human being. And in true Makhulu fashion, in teaching us alignment, she started with the past by sharing her story, right? Took us through the present by equipping us with the tools that we need as modern-day humans to live a life aligned with God energy, aligned with nature, aligned with high vibrational energy. And she ends with teaching us to be observant and preserve the future generations, okay? Because they are the ones who are going to continue the story, right, of us, continue the story of the lineage. And so we need to make sure we are producing what? We are molding what? Quality human beings, especially in the African space that is incredibly disrespected by other races. Because we've forgotten who we are. But just because we forgot does not mean we will not remember. And it does not mean we have no concept at all of who we are. Bakhono Mphemba bazothuma izukulwana zabo to come and remind umuntu omnyama ukuthi hey, papa mandoda, papa mantombi. You see now. Take the wealth of information that Umakhulu has shared with us Gule podcast and implement. Nami, I'm doing implementation and it's working out great. It is. And I want it to work out great for you. Come into my sessions as individuals abalumkile ke manje and ask the relevant questions, not just my sessions. Wherever you go, consult. Ukuze bazi ukuthi sekufike wena ke manje. Sekufike a person who's enlightened, who's wise, right? Who's attentive. And so my tricks and my gimmicks are not going to work on you. Okay? And that way you're able to sift out all the gunk. And you deal with people who know what they're doing in the spiritual space. And whose job it is to help you elevate your life experience. Thank you so much for joining me throughout the podcast. Thank you so much for your engagement. Thank you for respecting Mphemba and respecting her journey, and also just respecting the type of idlozi that she is. She is quite intense, but it all comes from a place of love, especially for umuntu omnyama, especially for the modern person, because she had a terrible life experience just by trying to be a modern person and to build a life that made sense for her, or customize her life ngendlela ayithanda ngayo. She then received a lot of pushback because people sought to villainize her instead of try to understand their own life journey and what life could look like for them should they focus on their heart's desires or pursuing their heart's desires and manifesting them into their 3D reality. So now I guess she lives vicariously through me, and she wants to see the energy that she missed out on play out in today's modern day society through you guys. Okay, through you guys getting to live a life that is overall happy and where you are overall content, where your happiness coefficient is at an all-time low. I hope you guys are calculating it. And where life truly makes sense, not just for you, but for your entire lineage. I'm super grateful for also the lessons that have come through in the sessions that I've had with you and the things that your ancestors bring up. I'm super grateful for their trust and their love that translates through the readings that some of you don't understand, but I hope from engaging with this podcast, you'll come to a different understanding and we will see an overall paradigm shift in Ngqondweni Yomuntu Omnyama. Thank you so much for joining me. I wish you guys nothing but love, light, joy, peace, happiness, and contentment throughout your life journey, not only for you, but also for your children, grandchildren, and future generations as a whole. Nsale kahle. CAMAGU.